All right, ready to tackle self-discipline. We're diving deep into How to Do Things You Hate by Peter Hollins. You guys shared it. And honestly, Shaolin monks and a productivity hack called Eating the Frog. I'm all ears.
Sounds like we've got some intriguing concepts to unpack. Let's get started.
First up, what is laziness, really? Hollins says it's an unwillingness to exert yourself, mentally or physically. But is that the whole story?
There's definitely more to it. It's this mix of thoughts, feelings, and habits we develop over time.
Hollins outlines all these types of laziness, confusion, fear, even fatigue, and having a fixed mindset.
And he gets into some interesting ideas. Loss of heart and comfort orientation particularly stand out.
This comfort orientation thing caught my eye too. The book suggests we avoid stuff just to escape uncomfortable feelings, leading to this vicious cycle Hollins calls the roundabout.
He uses examples we can all relate to, like putting off that tough email or a difficult conversation. We've all been there.
And the crazy thing is, by dodging those little discomforts, we can actually create bigger issues down the line.
The answer lies in acceptance. Not necessarily enjoying the discomfort, but just acknowledging it's there and choosing how we respond to it.
So we've pinpointed the problem, experiential avoidance. Now, how do we build a disciplined mindset? The book points to 3 key attitudes.
The first is discomfort orientation. It might sound weird, but successful people actually seek out discomfort.
Hollins uses the term comfort creep to describe how we get used to comfort, which makes us less resilient.
Exactly. He gives this example of Misaki intense challenges, like a 30-day wilderness trip in Alaska.
That's intense. But we could apply this in everyday life, right?
Absolutely. Cold showers, rucking, even embracing boredom, all these things can help us build resilience.
I'm feeling a bit chilly already just thinking about it. Hollins also talks about psychological flexibility. He illustrates it with this story about Jenny and her mother during lockdown.
It's a great example of 2 different mindsets. One gets stuck in negativity, while the other finds solutions that align with their values.
The contrast is pretty remarkable. Inflexible thinking leads to a dead end, but a flexible approach opens up all sorts of possibilities. And this is where ACT comes in, acceptance and commitment therapy. Hollins presents it as a way to cultivate flexibility.
ACT offers this powerful framework with 6 core skills: acceptance, cognitive diffusion, present moment awareness, self as context, values, and committed action.
So breaking that down, acceptance, like we discussed, is about acknowledging our feelings without judgment.
Cognitive diffusion is about recognizing our thoughts aren't absolute truths, they're just mental events.
Like, I'm a failure isn't a fact about me, it's just a thought passing through.
Exactly. Present moment awareness encourages us to focus on the here and now. It's the only place we can truly act and make a difference.
This self as context thing is pretty fascinating.
It's about seeing that we're not defined by any one story or label. Our sense of self is much bigger than that.
And then there are our values, the guiding principles that give our actions meaning.
They help us figure out what truly matters. And then finally, committed action is about aligning our behavior with those values, putting them into practice.
ACT seems like a pretty versatile toolkit. It's not about ignoring our problems or just thinking positive thoughts.
It's about how we choose to react to those problems, taking responsibility for both our inner world and our actions.
One thing in the book really surprised me: the 90-second rule of emotional control.
That's a game changer. Hollins says intense emotional reactions only last for 90 seconds, chemically speaking.
So anything past that 90 seconds is us choosing to stay upset, holding on to those emotions longer than we need to.
Right. It shows we have more control over our emotions than we think, which can be empowering.
Let's move on to focus. The book has this great flashlight analogy, comparing our attention to a beam of light we can direct.
It talks about 3 attention modes: flashlight, caution sign, and juggler. Each one impacts us differently.
That flashlight mode really resonates with me. Imagining our attention as this beam of light, and we can choose where to shine it.
We can practice things like mindfulness of breath or create distraction-free environments to get better at focusing. Practical steps that lead to tangible results.
Which brings us to the arrow model of focus. It goes a little deeper into the complexities of how we focus.
The model uses the metaphor of an arrow to describe how epinephrine, acetylcholine, and dopamine interact. It's all about the neurochemistry involved.
Epinephrine, the shaft of the arrow, gives us energy and alertness.
Acetylcholine, the arrowhead, directs our focus to a specific point.
And dopamine, the binding, keeps us motivated over time.
This model helps us figure out where our focus might be going wrong. Lack of energy, scattered attention, or can't keep up the effort.
Like if our epinephrine is low, maybe we need something like a cold shower. to boost alertness.
And if acetylcholine is the issue, maybe visualization exercises could help sharpen our focus.
For dopamine, good sleep and healthy habits are crucial for staying motivated over the long haul.
It's pretty amazing how connected our physical and mental states are when it comes to focus.
Now let's talk about the Spartan approach.
The idea is to discipline by subtraction. Get rid of distractions and say no to anything that doesn't align with your top priorities.
The book compares two people. Chris, who's busy but unfocused, and Christina, who's laser-focused on her goals.
Christina is all about removing the unnecessary. She streamlines her life to make space for what truly matters.
It makes you think, what could we all eliminate to make room for the important things?
That's a good question to consider. But it's important to remember even the most disciplined people have off days. Rest is as important as action. And that's where understanding ultradian rhythms comes in.
Those are the natural energy cycles we go through during the day, usually in 90 to 120-minute intervals.
It's crucial to work with them, not against them.
So when we hit that inevitable slump, instead of pushing through, maybe we should take a real break and come back refreshed.
Exactly. We can figure out our own peak times and schedule those demanding tasks accordingly so we're working when we're at our best.
Which brings us to the pre-game routine strategy.
A perfect tactic for when motivation decides to take a vacation.
It's like a series of small automatic actions that put us in the right mindset, like how athletes warm up before a game.
It could be as simple as making a cup of tea or listening to a particular song, something that signals to our brain it's time to focus.
Consistency is key here. The more we repeat the routine, the stronger that association becomes in our brains. Like training ourselves for peak performance, even when we're not feeling it.
Exactly. We're essentially hacking our own motivation systems.
And speaking of productivity hacks, there's the classic, eat the frog.
Tackle your toughest task first thing in the morning to clear mental space and gain momentum.
Hollins emphasizes that it helps overcome dread, builds confidence, and sets a positive tone for the day.
Get the hard part out of the way, and everything else feels easier.
The book also mentions the first pancake theory, acknowledging that our first attempts might not be perfect.
Embracing those early stumbles as part of the process. No need to strive for perfection from the get-go.
And then there's Warren Buffett's two-list strategy, all about prioritizing ruthlessly.
Figure out your top 5 goals and ignore everything else until you achieve them. It's a powerful way to stay laser-focused on what matters most.
And finally, we have never zero commitment.
A great principle for staying consistent, especially when willpower is weak.
It's about setting a minimum effort level for your goals no matter what. Even a tiny step forward counts.
So even on those days when you're feeling drained or uninspired, you still show up and do something, anything, towards your goal.
Never zero commitment ensures we're always moving forward, even if it's at a slower pace, building momentum all the way.
It's about that unwavering consistency that leads to success over time.
We've covered a lot in this first part of our How to Do Things You Hate deep dive. What are your main takeaways so far?
There's so much to learn from this book, but understanding your personal laziness type and using techniques like eat the frog and the pregame routine really resonate with me.
I'm really intrigued by discomfort orientation and working with ultradian rhythms. It's a whole new way to approach challenges and manage energy. But there's much more to explore. Ready to dig into the rest of this book?
Definitely. Let's continue this exploration. It's amazing how much our mindset affects what we're able to accomplish.
For sure. And speaking of mindset, let's dig into the 5 hindrances to self-mastery from the book.
These hindrances are like mental roadblocks that get in our way. They come from Shaolin philosophy.
It's fascinating how ancient wisdom still applies to our lives today.
The first hindrance is sensual desire. It's not just about physical pleasures, it's about getting caught up in cravings and distractions.
So like that urge to check social media when you're supposed to be working on something important.
Exactly. We get sidetracked by things that offer instant gratification, even if they derail us from our long-term goals.
The second hindrance is ill will. This one seems a little more complex.
It's kind of the opposite of sensual desire. Ill will is about resistance and aversion, judging tasks as unpleasant or difficult.
So instead of being tempted by distractions, we're actively pushing away what needs to be done.
Right. We might complain about a task, make excuses, or just refuse to engage with it.
The third hindrance is sloth and torpor.
This one probably hits home for a lot of people. It's that feeling of heaviness and lethargy, a lack of motivation.
Like a mental and physical inertia that prevents us from taking action.
Precisely. We might feel overwhelmed or hopeless, or just too tired to get started.
The fourth one is restlessness.
That agitated, anxious energy that keeps our minds racing.
Worrying too much. Overthinking, second-guessing ourselves, makes it hard to settle down and concentrate.
And lastly, we have doubt and skepticism.
This can really chip away at our confidence.
It's all about questioning our abilities, doubting our worth, letting negative self-talk take over.
Instead of trusting ourselves and taking action, we hesitate and overanalyze, which sabotages our efforts.
These 5 hindrances give us a really helpful framework for understanding our struggles with self-discipline.
And the book offers strategies for overcoming each one. For instance, to combat sensual desire, it suggests practicing mindfulness and delaying gratification.
To tackle ill will, it emphasizes reframing our perspectives, finding the meaning in difficult tasks.
For sloth and torpor, it recommends building momentum through small steps and celebrating our progress.
For restlessness, the book suggests grounding techniques, like deep breathing exercises, focusing on the present moment.
And for doubt and skepticism, it encourages self-compassion and focusing on our strengths.
Pretty incredible how these ancient principles can still be applied to our lives today.
I agree. It highlights the importance of not just focusing on what we do, but also understanding the mental and emotional states that drive our actions.
Let's shift gears now and talk about specific techniques for boosting productivity. We've already touched upon Eat the Frog, but this book is full of other great methods.
One that caught my attention is a Pomodoro technique. Are you familiar with it?
Of course. It's a time management technique that uses short bursts of focused work followed by short breaks.
So you set a timer for 25 minutes and work on a single task without distractions.
Then you take a 5-minute break to recharge, and then repeat the cycle.
It helps to maintain focus, prevents burnout, creates a rhythm and momentum in our work.
Simple yet effective, can be adapted to all sorts of tasks and work styles.
Another one I found interesting is the Eisenhower matrix, also known as the urgent important matrix.
It's a way to prioritize tasks by categorizing them into 4 quadrants: urgent and important. Important but not urgent. Urgent, not important, and neither urgent nor important.
It encourages us to focus on the tasks that are both urgent and important, delegate the urgent but not important ones, and then eliminate or postpone those that fall into the remaining 2 quadrants.
It's a helpful tool for managing our time effectively, making sure we're spending our energy on the things that make the biggest impact.
And then there's batching, which is great for people who struggle with decision fatigue.
Batching is all about grouping similar tasks together and completing them in a dedicated block of time.
So instead of constantly switching between different types of work, we streamline our efforts by focusing on one type of task at a time.
It clears mental clutter, boosts efficiency, and helps us get into a flow state.
Especially useful for things like email management, social media engagement, administrative work.
Speaking of minimizing distractions, let's talk about Parkinson's law.
This is a pretty interesting one.
Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion.
So if we give ourselves a week to complete a task, it'll probably take the whole week, even if we could have done it in a day or 2.
It reminds us to set realistic deadlines and challenge ourselves to work more efficiently.
By setting tighter time constraints, we can often boost our focus and productivity.
And we can't forget about accountability.
Accountability can be a game changer for those of us who struggle with self-discipline.
It's about having someone to answer to. Could be a coach, mentor, or accountability partner.
Sharing our goals, tracking our progress, having someone to check in with. It provides motivation and support.
Creates a sense of external pressure that helps us stay on track, especially when we're tempted to give up.
We've covered a lot of different productivity techniques and strategies, but it's important to remember that what works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. It's all about experimenting, finding what fits our individual needs and preferences, creating a system that supports our goals.
And let's not forget that self-discipline is a journey. It's not about being perfect. It's about making consistent progress and embracing the process of growth.
Well said. It's about developing a mindset and habits that allow us to live more intentional and fulfilling lives.
This deep dive has been full of insights and practical strategies. Before we wrap up this segment, let's circle back to those 5 hindrances.
Those hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, and doubt, they're not just abstract ideas. They show up in our daily lives, often in subtle ways.
Like that urge to pick up your phone when you're bored or anxious. That's sensual desire and restlessness at play.
Or the resistance you feel when you have to start a difficult task. That's ill will rearing its head.
And that voice of self-doubt that whispers, you're not good enough, or what's the point? That's the 5th hindrance, chipping away at your confidence and motivation.
Recognizing these hindrances is so important. It helps us interrupt those negative patterns and choose a more empowering response.
Instead of falling into the trap of avoidance, procrastination, or self-sabotage, we can practice awareness, acceptance, and a commitment to action.
Becoming the master of our minds rather than letting our minds master us.
All the techniques we've discussed, from Eat the Frog to the Pomodoro technique, are tools to help us navigate these hindrances and cultivate lasting self-discipline.
And remember, self-discipline isn't about being flawless. It's about making conscious choices and taking consistent action towards the life we want to create.
This segment has been super insightful. We hope you've gained some valuable knowledge and practical strategies for overcoming procrastination and building unshakable self-discipline. Ready for the final part of our deep dive?
I am. Let's finish strong.
It really is amazing how much control we have over our internal state, even when it feels out of reach.
Right. And recognizing those 5 hindrances is like having a secret weapon against procrastination.
Like we're shining a light on those hidden patterns that keep us stuck. And once we see them, we can start to break free.
And all those techniques we talked about are the tools to do just that. Whether it's Eat the Frog or cultivating psychological flexibility with ACT, we have so many options.
And it's crucial to remember that self-discipline isn't about deprivation, it's about empowerment. Freeing ourselves from those self-imposed limits and creating a life that reflects our values.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one last gem from the book I'd love to touch on.
Oh, I'm all ears. What is it?
It's the idea of making your bed. Not literally, but metaphorically.
Now that's intriguing. Tell me more.
Hollins suggests that starting our day with a small act of discipline, like making our bed, sets a positive tone and builds momentum.
It's like we're priming our minds for success, even with something seemingly insignificant.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that discipline comes from small, consistent actions, not grand gestures.
A little reminder that even something as simple as making your bed can be a powerful expression of self-discipline.
It's a beautiful thought. Self-discipline isn't about being rigid or punishing ourselves. It's about making choices that empower us to live more fulfilling lives.
Creating a life that feels harmonious, intentional, and full of meaning.
It's about becoming the architects of our own destinies.
This has been such a great deep dive. We've uncovered so many valuable insights from Peter Hollins' How to Do Things You Hate. And we want to leave you with this concise 10-point summary.
Ready to recap?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Number 1, laziness isn't just a personality trait. It's this complex interplay of different factors, and there are specific solutions for each one.
Number 2, we often fall into the trap of experiential avoidance, but the key to breaking free is acceptance.
Number 3, developing a disciplined mindset means embracing discomfort, cultivating psychological flexibility, and mastering emotional regulation.
Number 4, simple techniques like the flashlight analogy, the arrow model, and the Spartan approach can make a huge difference in our focus and productivity.
Number 5, working with our natural ultradian rhythms and creating a pre-game routine can help us hack our motivation, even on those tough days.
Number 6, eat the frog. Prioritize those important tasks. That helps create momentum and reduces those feelings of being overwhelmed.
Number 7, never zero commitment. It ensures consistency, even when motivation is low.
Number 8, recognize those 5 hindrances to self-mastery, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and doubt, and actively work to overcome them.
Number 9, self-discipline is not about being perfect. It's about making progress and embracing the journey of growth.
And finally, number 10, remember, even a small act of discipline like making your bed can set the tone for a successful day and contribute to long-term success.
We hope these insights inspire you to overcome procrastination and create a life filled with purpose and intention. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to become the best version of yourselves.